But then behind the scenes, nobody's answering phone calls. Nobody returns text messages because they don't want it. But we'll see if this happens. We will see. Pacquiao this week put some gas on the fire, said that Mayweather has nowhere left to run but to agree to fight me. He said, we all know most of his fights will put you to sleep. I'll do my best to make this a thrilling and entertaining fight, but I doubt if he's going to want to engage me in a slugfest. So Pacquiao, the clock is ticking on him and Mayweather. Both guys are 36 and 37 respectively. Pacquiao 57-5-2, Mayweather 47-0, and the undisputed drawing king on boxing pay-per-view. So that's the one people are waiting for. I gotta tell you, after that, what's next? I'm just curious, boxing fans. Hit me up over the next, whenever you listen to this show, hit me up and let me know your thoughts, because that's the big one. You know, there's always the big one dangling, whether it was, Tyson and Holyfield and, whatever, so on and so forth. Man, I don't know. I don't know that there's any, and that's why I think boxing's in danger. And speaking of why they're in danger, one of the reasons is the other night. I did not talk about this yesterday. Got off the air. We were so talking about the Browns and Johnny football and all of that. UFC the other night over the weekend. Stipe Miocic, my man from Cleveland, represented proud. Hey, the way them guys went out there on Sunday and laid down, the way Stipe went out there on Saturday night made up for it. UFC judges absolutely ripped Stipe off, in my opinion, and it's not just my opinion. I've seen it across the board, all over the spectrum of sports, entertainment, MMA. Solid majority believing that Stipe owned at least 3 of the 5 rounds of that fight. I literally tweeted, like in the 3rd round, that Stipe was just beating the hell out of Dos Santos. To me, and I was telling my son, I said, I know some people that don't get into combat sports will say, oh, J-Rock sounds barbaric with this. But man, to me, that was one of the best heavyweight fights. And I've seen a lot of UFC. I've been an MMA guy way before MMA became a mainstream thing. And, way before people knew it was MMA, back when they just said that cage fighting stuff and human cockfighting and all of that. And so I think I've seen a lot of fights. Stipe and Dos Santos was one of the best heavyweight fights I've seen. 5 rounds of absolute 2 guys beating each other, just fighting, and nobody wanted to lose that fight. Both men's faces battered and bloodied, and to me, again, this is the animalistic side and a little pro wrestler coming out of me, but ain't nothing gets me going more than seeing 2 guys with the blood running down their face going toe-to-toe, giving it everything that they got. Much like, and this is my point about Pacquiao and Mayweather, much like those old, great heavyweight boxing fights. You don't see that so much. Even with, Mayweather's your big draw, but Pacquiao's right. All Mayweather does is run and have boring decision fights. Nobody goes out like it. Hey, man, what happened to the days of hitting the ring and throwing leather and one man survives, man? I understand that you don't just go swinging. I know there's strategy. Come on, don't act like I'm some newbie to boxing or something. But my point is what we saw from Stipe and Dos Santos the other night. That's what our parents and grandparents, that's where boxing was. It's not anymore, and that's why what's left after Pacquiao Mayweather? What is the big fight that's going to sell millions of pay-per-views for boxing that people want to see? Because I don't know. I have no, a Klitschko fight? I mean, who else, who's your big name fighters? Because if it's not Mayweather and Pacquiao, I don't really know who your big names are. What are your big draw heavyweights? And I don't think they have them. I think UFC has surpassed boxing as this generation's combat sport, and I think that boxing will always be, to use an MMA term, they'll always be fighting from the bottom from this point on. I think that MMA has it's a combination of boxing, fighting, and short attention span theater, and all of those things that play right into what today's society gets into. And I just believe for today's generation and beyond, UFC or MMA is what boxing was for many growing up. You're the same people that grew up on Ali and Foreman and Frazier and Tyson and Holyfield. Now they'll grow up on Dos Santos and Velasquez and Chuck Liddell when he was hot, and Brock Lesnar and whatever. That's the evolution of fighting. But, man, back to Stipe and Dos Santos Saturday night. That was a hell of a fight. If you missed it, go watch it. Go watch it. It's on. I know you can watch it on demand. I think it's on YouTube. Might be on the UFC fight, right, on the UFC site, because it was free on Fox the other night. Millions of people saw it. It was a badass fight, and Stipe got robbed. I could not believe listening to but I knew it. I actually had a buddy of mine text me seconds before the decision came in. He said, "I'm telling you now, it's going down for Dos Santos," and I knew it. He was right. He's somebody that's in the lower level, local, MMA, but he knows how judging. We were talking about it. I'm like, how can you possibly go the other way? It's easy. The name, it's the reputation, it's plain and simple. When it's that close, to me, it wasn't 50-50 though. I believe you could say Stipe won 4 of those 5 rounds. He at least won 3.5 of them. That's for sure. So even if you want to go 3-2, Stipe still won 3 of those fights. And I don't believe that the 2 that Dos Santos won were so dominant that they make up the points for the other 3. I mean, there were some, this was not one-sided. It was one-sided for the first round and a half, and then at the end of, was it the second round, when Dos Santos got that first good shot, busted open Stipe's mouth and rocked him. You could see, and both of those guys, Stipe especially, he would take a shot and smile a little bit and say, "Hey, I like tasting it, man. Let's go." But man, those guys were hitting each other hard for 25 minutes, 5 rounds. Oh, man, unbelievable fight. I do think Stipe got robbed, but guess what? They're set up for a big money pay-per-view rematch now, because there was a lot of talk of whoever won that fight will be the number 1 contender, and we'll have to wait for whatever, so on and so. I'll tell you what, while you're waiting for the interim and Kane when he comes back from his injury, I think those 2 guys have another fight coming, and it's going to be on pay-per-view. And then Stipe wins, then you've got the rubber match. But I think he may have just begun on an accident. Stipe and Dos Santos may have just begun the next great series of heavyweight UFC battles, because neither man was that much better than the other. Those are 2 tough dudes right there, and I very much look forward to seeing both of them. I mean, it was good enough that I'm not going to keep railing about Stipe getting robbed. He absolutely won that fight. But it was good enough that I want to see those 2 fight again, man. And I think that a lot of people that saw that fight on Fox will pay money to see that. And you know what else they're going to pay to see? They're going to pay to see John Jones and Daniel Cormier. A lot of fans didn't know. Like I said, I follow MMA, so I knew about the SportsCenter fight and all of that. And John Jones is so fake. They actually showed that video package where they chopped it up a bit. You have to actually see it in the order that it happened, how John Jones was just talking trash and being so disrespectful, and then the second that he found out that it was on live, he started crying and it's talking about Jesus and being religious and humble, and Cormier was just like, "This is the fakest thing I've ever seen in my life." Did you guys see that? He actually just flipped a switch. And anyways, but that's going to be a good fight. John Jones knows how to sell fights. That's the thing. That's what these guys don't understand, is that the reason people want to see Mayweather and Pacquiao is not because Mayweather and Pacquiao are hands down the 2 best fighters today. When people wanted to see them fight, they were. Now, they're not. There's other fighters that are technically as good or better than them, but they're the 2 big draws. Their promos have drawn people in, and they've had people waiting for this fight for so long that it's the biggest draw possible. But being the biggest draw has nothing to do with being the best performer. They're 2 totally separate things. As a matter of fact, usually in a sport like boxing, wrestling, mixed martial arts, your peak as a draw usually comes about 5 years after your peak as a fighter. As crazy as that sounds, you've usually got about a 5-year window before you peak out as a draw. Well, after you peak as a fighter. All right. Anyways, and Stipe's coming on the show. We weren't able to get it done before the fight. I definitely am going to catch up to Stipe and talk about this and see where he's at coming out of that coming up soon. Charles, yep, Blue Jackets fight tonight. I see that. Blue Jackets have a hockey match tonight. They don't fight. See, I've spent 20 minutes talking about fighting. So now you got me ready to throw blows here. They may fight. I mean, hell, it's a hockey game, so they very well may fight at the end of this thing. Blue Jackets looking to continue their streak as they've gotten things picked up a bit from their slow struggles at the early part of the season. Speaking of picking things up, I didn't even get into it yet. Said we were going to talk a little college hoops. Cleveland State got a bounce-back win last night, as they should have. No offense. They played Mount Vernon of Nazarene last night at the Wolstein Center, but Vikings went to town. They were up, I think it was like 46-13 at halftime or something like that. Trey Lewis rolled 32 points, set a CSU single-game record, tied a record, 9 3-pointers last night. Vikings rolled 86-40 over Mount Vernon Nazarene. They jumped to 5-5 on the season. Mount Vernon fell to 11-3, but again, that's a different level of basketball than what CSU plays. Coach Waters was ticked off the other day. I don't know if you guys heard, but after that loss to Bowling Green that we mentioned yesterday, 90 minutes plus after the game, all coach. There was no back and forth conversation. It wasn't an episode of the Sports Fix. It was 90 minutes of me telling you why you stink. He went to town on that team. There were all kinds of incidents in that game where there was problems with the players. There's chemistry issues on this team. There were guys shouldering each other coming off the court, guys talking trash to coaches on the sideline. When coach hit the locker room, 90-plus minutes, he reamed that Vikings team. They definitely bounced back and played better here, but again, level of competition does have to be kept in mind. They came out and played, and you know what? He did a little Coach Waters thing, kind of taught them a little bit of a lesson, because usually when you're blowing a team out like that, you'll pull the starters and you'll put the backups in and let them get some run and all of that. He kept his starters out there for a long, long time during this blowout to teach them a lesson that you're going to have to earn everything, even your time on the bench. And you guys owe me for that crap that you pulled the other day. Vikings have now pulled back to 500. Coach Waters said it. He said there's way too much talent on this team for us to be up and down and having the problems that we have. They have points in the games where they get selfish. There's some chemistry issues here, and they're just going to have to shake that off. And they continue Thursday. Vikings head to, here's a tough one. Tough one coming up. Number 6 ranked Virginia. 7 o'clock road game coming up. ESPNU is going to have it. Al Pulowski is going to be on the radio, 1220. I don't know if it's 1220 or 4. They got 1220 WHK. I know because I worked there that 1420 is WHK, 1220 is WHKW. So I don't know. It's not my job to promote it. Al Pulowski's calling the game there on one of those stations. 7 o'clock tip-off Thursday night. We'll talk more about that later on in the week here. All right, guys, up against it. I was going to reopen the phone lines. The Skype is frozen up. I've got to literally reboot this computer when I shut down. So tomorrow we'll open up the phones. We'll get Doug Plagans on the phone. Speaking of the phones, we'll get John McMullen from the Sports Network on. There we go. Let me catch up to myself a little bit. And as well, Dan Wismar going to be here as always. Busy show tomorrow. McMullen, Wismar, Doug Plagans of the Monsters. Thank you guys so much for being with us. Thanks to Jeff Gorman and Dr. Football for being in the house. We'll open up the phones tomorrow. If you've got a take between now and then, 216-539-7535. 216-539-7535. Tonight, actually, I'm leaving in a few moments. I get a chance to call some basketball Civil War style. The North and South battle ignites on the basketball court. Eastlake North, Willoughby South. I'll be live from Willoughby South tonight on 13th. Actually, it's an I believe it's just their internet feed game tonight. WINTradio.com. Willoughby South, Eastlake North, 7:30 tip-off. I'll be calling the action tonight. WINTradio.com. We'll talk about that tomorrow as well. Guys, have a great one. We've got a lot to get into. Tomorrow we hit hump day, start rolling it downhill. So enjoy the rest of the night. Come on back here tomorrow and let's do it. Same bat time, same bat channel, live at noon, right here on the Sports Fix. We love you, Cleveland and beyond. We'll see you tomorrow, right here on the Fix.
Long nights, cold weather, it ain't nothing pretty. So much hate up in this itty bitty city. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. Put your hands up in the air, everybody say yeah, yeah.